In the last lecture, I mentioned that most of the intellectual virtues arise from a motive to get truth and to avoid falsehood. Some virtues, like curiosity and inquisitiveness, are directed towards getting the truth. Other virtues, like intellectual thoroughness and carefulness, are more directed towards preventing ourselves from getting false beliefs. Intellectual humility and open-mindedness probably do both. They help us to believe what is true and to avoid believing something false. Why is there a difference between the desire to believe the truth and the desire to avoid believing what's false? The answer goes back to a famous paper by William James called The Will to Believe. Part of what James does in that paper is to call attention to the difference between a desire to get something good intellectually and the desire to avoid getting something bad. The desire to get something good leads to extending ourselves, being adventuresome intellectually, asking questions, taking a risk now and then. The desire to avoid getting something bad leads us to be intellectually cautious, to be as careful as possible in forming our beliefs, weighing all the evidence and holding back on believing until we think we have been intellectually thorough. James thinks that different people have different intellectual values. Valuing truth is different from disvaluing falsehood. The person who values truth is more of a risk taker than the person who is afraid of falsehood. I think we can say that even though the virtues of intellectual caution serve a different end than the virtues of love of truth, the virtues of intellectual caution are still virtues, and the virtues of intellectual adventuresomeness are virtues also. But I will leave it to you to decide which ones are more important. I think it probably depends upon the context. Here are some virtues of the intellectually careful and cautious person. One is intellectual attentiveness. The attentive person knows how to look, how to examine, how to identify relevant details. She pays attention to the evidence. Another is intellectual thoroughness. The thorough person knows how and where to find evidence and knows how to weigh it. She is not hasty in coming to conclusions. Another virtue is intellectual perseverance. Getting knowledge can be slow and painstaking. There can be setbacks and discouragement. The persevering person does not give up easily when on a line of discovery. The intellectual virtues I have mentioned in the last two lectures are virtues of a person who sincerely values truth and conscientiously tries to get it. But we depend upon other people for most of our beliefs. That means that we can be harmed unless other people have these virtues too. We live in communities that require trust in each other, and having the intellectual virtues makes us trustworthy. We need to trust other people, and each of us needs the virtues that makes us deserving of that trust. We can see what would happen if we did not have intellectual trust in each other in the Greek legend of Cassandra. According to that myth, Apollo gave Cassandra the gift of prophecy as part of a scheme to seduce her. When she rebuffed him, he did not take back his gift, but he did something much worse. He allowed her to continue to see the future, but she was fated never to be believed. Cassandra's warning that the Trojan horse was a trick went unheeded, with disastrous results for the Trojans. But the effect on her was terrible in a different way. Aeschylus tells us that it drove her mad. Imagine what it would be like to be disbelieved about everything you say, not just predictions about the future. You would be completely isolated, and there would be no way you could make plans with others or even do the minimum to carry out your practical life. There would be no point in talking to anybody. We need to be able to trust each other, but we can only do that if everyone agrees to do their best to be worthy of intellectual trust. If too many people are intellectually irresponsible, that undermines the fabric of society in a drastic way. How often do you think you can trust what you read or hear? Once you find out that many people are untrustworthy, you start to doubt everybody because it is so hard to tell the trustworthy from the untrustworthy. That's why I think that intellectual virtues are just as important as moral virtues. When we talk about civic virtues next week, think about the importance of intellectual virtues for a well-functioning society of citizens who want to be informed voters and participants in public debate. Think about whether there is a difference between the virtues that should govern what you believe privately and the virtues that should govern what we say to each other. It seems to me that the virtues of caution are more important for what we tell each other.